Hi everyone, it's good to be back again. So this is the second recording. The first recording we had looked at how to deploy Caldera on Azure. We did use Azure App Service. We also deployed it locally, and we still have an instance of that running, although on a different environment. Locally, we can actually see that running here. This is locally. You can see it's pointing to an IP address on a local machine. We also had mentioned that we're going to be deploying Vectr today, which will be the second recording. Then we will see how we can quickly use Vectr to as an adversary emulation planner. We're just going to deploy deploy a basic plan, see what that looks like. Then hopefully we should be able to deploy an agent on Caldera as well today, see what that looks like if possible. If I'm not able to do that, then maybe the next third video would be to have the integration between Vectr and Caldera done, so we can actually use that automation to fetch the plans from Vectr and export them into an adversary in Caldera, having all the detailed abilities as well. I hope you do like the content. Please, if you do, like and subscribe, and spread the news out there. We're actually doing some fun stuff here. Okay, so I also would love to extend my gratitude. I saw we completed 1,000. That's actually a good one. Thanks to all subscribers who've been helping me with the channel, as well as helping grow the channel. Okay, so let's get into today's. It's pretty easy. Again, the documentation for Vectr makes it super easy to deploy Vectr, so it's not like I'm trying to do any complex thing here. No. Okay, so first we've got the hardware requirements. From my experience or use case, couldn't get this run on the Mac for some weird reasons. Because of these requirements, the ARM not supported. So I'm using the recent MacBook. I couldn't get it working on it. I was able to deploy pull the images, build the containers, but it just won't start. It went in a loop. I did inspect the containers, but I just couldn't get it working on my end. So what we're going to be doing today, we'll deploy it on this Kali Linux box that sits somewhere, and as well, our Caldera is running on this box, by the way. So just so you know, if I do something like let me see, and we grep for server.py, you would see our Caldera is running on this box, and again, it's insecure. We should be using certificates, but we're not doing any of those for now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to follow the walkthrough and just quickly deploy Vectr on that same box. All right, so for requirements, you should be able to have certificates, CS certificates using Curl. Then you should be able to the keyring, as well as pulling down that particular Docker package library. Then have that set. Then you should be able to just set the repository apt update, then pull docker ci, docker ce. Again, if you're using Kali Linux, all you need to do is to do apt-get sudo apt install docker.io. You should be good to go if you're using Kali Linux. Pretty easy stuff. But if you're using Ubuntu, you can follow this walkthrough. You should be able to get it up and running. Once you're done with that, then you should be able to download Vectr runtime, which is where we're going to pick it up from. So I'm going to grab this command. I will mkdir Vectr. My bad. Then I'm going to okay, so we're in the directory we just created. There's nothing in here, pretty nothing. So what we're going to do is we're going to paste our command, and this should be able to allow us pull down the requirement for Vectr and also unzip it. So you would see a Docker compose here, which is actually the definition. Then if I ls-al, you see a .env here, which is where we're going to configure some configurations like password, credentials, and all the stuff. To start with, let's try to maybe look at the Docker compose and see what it looks like. Maybe talk a bit more around that. We had recorded a video around Docker, so this should be pretty easy for you to handle. I'm sure if you've been following us, following our videos. So I'm going to cut the content of Docker, and I'm going to pipe this to more. Okay, so to start with, we can probably see a version definition 3.4. Then for the services, we're using Vector Postgres, particular image Postgres. You'd find these images on Docker Hub, pretty open. The network, we're using a bridge network. We spoke about networking when we did Docker. For the volume, we're defining a bind here. So you would see Vector RB to valid Postgres database. My bad. Uh, I'm just going to run this one more time. Okay, so as well as restart unless stopped. So this is more like persistent. If it's stopped, we want to restart it again. Then for the Vector Tomcat, we've got Security Advisor Vector. Again, this is open source. If you, just in case you have the Vector deployed and you want to upgrade, I think this is the one you'll be upgrading to the recent version for the most part. If you run in 8 points, you can just change this to 9 point. You should have the recent one. For networking as well, using bridge. Then we're actually defining a list for this vector host name. Volumes, we're doing the volume binds as well. You can see all that here. If I go more, we should have the vector web server. For the web server, we're also using the Security Advisor RTA web server image as well as a bridge network. Unless stopped restarts, then also for the builder, we're specifying the builder image as well as the volume as well as a bit of dependency. Yeah, so we see depends on, so it's going to wait for this guy before this particular container will be deployed. Very important, right? Then we go to the networks. Again, we've got bridge network definition here. My bad. Also, we're using the subnets as specified here as well. Then for volumes, we've got all our volumes definition there as well. I think that's all we have in the file. Again, if there's another file there, if I cut the content .env, this is where our config sits. So we'll see vector. Again, we can change this, but if you don't change this is going to be the default host name it's going to be using. But if you've got a bit of like a domain, you've got your domain and it's valid, you can actually point this to your domain. So it's actually going to be behind certificates, an encryption of, sorry, HTTPS. In our case, we're just going to leave this as default. The container log level, again, 1 for me is fine, because if you go anything beyond this, it's going to be a bit noisy. For the vector data API key, this is recommended to change it. Again, you want to change this if you're going to be leveraging the API. In our case, we'll be using the API. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use nano, don't judge me. Get into this file, I'm going to change that key. I think that's going to be the first thing I want to change here. So we'll remove this. I'll just use our default password. My bad. Okay, then we'll leave the JWT signing key and encryption key as default. Then the Docker the compose project name, I'll leave it as sandbox. That's fine. We can change it as well. The vector data directory, again, I'm mapping this to var data. Again, I'm fine with that the way it is. For the Postgres, recommended you change this if you're going to be using this on a prod environment, but in our case, we just pretty fine the way it is. So I'm going to write my changes. Then what I need to, oh my bad, what I need to do next is I need to be able to deploy or build this. Again, once you have that config done, it's just basically Docker Compose up, you should be good to go, which is this. Again, you can use the D. In my case, I won't be using the D. The D would be would silence everything that's supposed to be printing out on the screen like a noise, which helps you actually investigate should there be something wrong. But I'm fine with this the way it is. So I'm going to put my password for this. And if that's not okay, okay, my bad. Docker Compose. Let's dash there. Okay, this should be good. So it's going to pull all the images. It's going to, from those image, deploy containers, then have the networking done, have the storage, sorry, the volume mounting done, then also, excuse me, start those containers. And once those containers are up, we should be able to hit vector on the IP address and the specified ports. If you remember, I think it's excuse me, 8081. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to a browser. While we're waiting for that, I'm just going to grab this same IP address and I'll open up a new tab. Um, I will be waiting to hit this on 8081. Uh, let's wait for this. Okay, so you can see it's actually downloading. This might take a while because I think there are about 4 or 5 different images that must be pulled, then about 5 or 6 different containers that should respond from those images. So I'll pause the video. Once it's done, I'll pick it up from there. Okay, so I guess we're almost there. Again, we can actually run a few commands just to be sure we're keeping track of what's going on there. So I'm going to do something like a sudo. I think I can just do that on this terminal session. I'm going to clear the screen. Do docker. Oh goodness. I just need to put in that password. So currently, we don't have any images, and that's strange. Okay, let's wait for this. Probably it's still. Oh, okay, it's still trying to run, but I think the images should be in. Let's just verify one more time. Oh, there we go. So we've got our images. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got Redis, we've got the Postgres, we've got the vector tomcat. We'll be hitting it. Let's verify if those containers are already up and running. So we have created status, they're up and they're running. So obviously we can hit this on 8081. We can see it's open on 8081, and that should be the Tomcat. So if I go over to my browser, I should be able to hit Vector on 8081. Just accept the risk again. It will make sense on a prod environment to have certificates and valid one, but we're just going to get this up and running so we can see what it looks like. Now, while that is loading on its own, we already have Caldera up, so we've got both of them up. Caldera is up, Vector is up. Then the next, I think the next recording would be to integrate both of them. So the goal for us is to be able to plan adversary emulation on Vector, then use the automation to fetch that from Vector to create um, an adversary in Caldera. Then that automation should be able to trigger an operation of the adversary pending if an agent is hooked up. So the last time, remember, we did mention that we're also going to be doing some updates on the default Sandcat or Goldcat agent, so we can actually get it ready to be able to bypass like an AV stuff. We'll be doing that cool stuff here as well. But for now, we'll wait for this thing to load. Still loading. I can tell there's still a bit going on here, so probably this might take a while to load. But once it's loaded, we will log in using the credentials that we had configured. Then we should be good to go. I think we just work with the default credentials for now. Then we can change that up later. Okay, there we go. So going with the credential, which is admin, then the password would be yeah, this should be changed again. This is just a default password, so recommendation would be to change that password. Okay, so we are logging in, and the first thing you see on your first deployment will be set up an environment. So in our case, we're going to create an environment. We've got these two default ones. Again, they're already built with templates, but we're just going to create a one for ourselves. We'll call it let's give it a fine name, YouTube. Uh, YouTube env. Okay, that's looks good to us. Now, again, it doesn't mean we can change those environment. We can actually modify environments. See, select active environment. I can still change this here. So don't think we can change it. We can select this one and it's going to load up that one, which are default ones. But we'll just stick to us for now. Now we can also see the security risk advisor templates. They are templates predefined for financial services, healthcare, retail, and hospitality. These are already pretty cool templates. You can just take a look at them to see what it looks like. For instance, let's delve into the financial services. Again, we want to build off this. It means we're loading this FS Index 2023. This is pretty updated. You can actually see it's updated. Once we create this, it's going to have that populated here. Now we can open this up. We would see that there's already a plan. Now this is something you'd want to do if you pretty much want to have everything pre-filled for you. Don't want to manually start doing that hassle of trying to populate. But I'm also going to show you how you can build from scratch, just in case you are emulating a known threat actor like a known malware slash APT. You already have the maybe the profile built from your maybe MIPS integration or whatever you have, or even from Myther. You just want to emulate that non-trajectory environment. You would see the mapping is done for the MIDA technique and also the tactics. You can just fetch that and build from scratch. I'll show you that. But for now, let's review this. If I open each of these, you would see there are test cases defined for each of these. So you can see extract sensitive HTTP data. I can drill into the test case. I would see what exactly it's supposed to do. Now, excuse me, extra sensitive data. I will see a description, then I will see the technique it maps to. In our case, the automation which we're going to be leveraging would be reading off the technique ID and using that to search the atomics in Caldera to get the exact commands that should be populated in the planner so it can actually build the adversary and have the commands populated, then execute the commands as well. But as default, we can see that it's pointing to like an operator's guidance. Now, this is a link we can actually visit to see the guidance for that particular technique. Okay, my bad. This is more like a dummy page. So again, it's as defined. It's actually extract data from a network over HTTP, TCP, AD. So it's going to, if I fill in something here like this, it's going to pretty much extract that data and actually give me that data as an operator. Cool stuff. This would definitely be like a dummy or test website built for this. Great one. Very important that you actually look at that. Now, there's also a good part of this, which is the blue team side. Don't forget, also Caldera has the red and the blue. So you can as well build capabilities around blue team, which means you want to measure your actual detection capability. You know the kind of tools you've got. You can actually add those tools here. Right off the bat, there are a couple of tools here. If you've got SIEM, if you've got like an EDR or stuff, there are solutions here. You can map these two and you can actually use that to tell if I trigger this from a red perspective, did I catch it from a blue perspective? If I do, obviously that's a good thing. But if I don't, then I can start looking at areas of fine tuning and improvement, which would be maybe from the telemetry that was gathered for that particular execution. Can I actually build new detection use cases or maybe new rules to be able to catch this based on whatever solution I'm using, if it is EDR or AV or whatever the case may be. You can actually build that capability using Vectr. That's why I chose to go with Vectr in this case. But for now, we're not going to be leveraging the blue. We're just going to stick to the red. So we can verify this. If this is good to go, you can actually start this up. Then you can save this. It's going to change the status in progress. Now, in our case, we'll be playing with excuse me, we'll be playing with a bunch of other stuffs like around tags. So you see there are tags that can be set for this. Currently, nothing is set by default, but we can actually configure this to actually use tags. So in our case, we'll be playing with tags. We'll have specific tags that we can use to maybe call or trigger particular test cases. I do hope that as we advance, we'll see how that stuff works as well. I'm going to close this up. Going back to this, we have all the tests. So if you remember, there are two test cases here. I just started one. I can as well do the same for impact. See all the test cases. I can review them. If I'm fine with it, I can start it. But again, I didn't mention I'm going to show you how to create this from scratch. Let's assume we don't want to work with this. We want to pretty much build ours from scratch. How do we go about that? So if I go back to our homepage, for instance, we're currently on our homepage. Okay, I can start a new assessment. You can see there, if I want to switch to healthcare or retail and hospitality, I can switch that on the fly and I can have a new one populated. Or I can also right click here and I can clone this and use it to create a new one, which is most likely what we're going to do. If I clone this, I'm just going to call this testing. So we're going to have a new one, created testing, now not performed. So we can actually get into testing and we can pretty much remove everything here if we want to. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go this route. I'm just showcasing. I can delete everything here. So I have a clean slate. I'm just going to do that. Okay, I should have paused the video, but no worries. I'm just going to be lazy. All right, so once I have all this, I can create a new campaign. So there's a campaign, there's an assessment. If I want to create a new campaign, I can click on create a new campaign. Let's call it a name, YouTube tests. So if you look at how we're going to map this to Caldera, on Caldera, you've got what we call abilities, adversaries, and operations. For instance, on Caldera, an ability would be like maybe a particular technique, a test case, which could be like something like this. Excuse me, 1 minute sleep. Basically, that's the name of the ability. In our case, the mapping we'll be doing is in Vector. We should be able to map what we'll call like a campaign. Let me close this first. If I go back here, we've got these assessments. So our mapping will be assessments to more like adversary in Caldera. But if you drill into an assessment, you have what we call campaigns. For instance, this one that we had looked at previously, you see they are campaigns. Each of these campaigns, we can map the campaigns and the corresponding test cases to abilities in Caldera. So it means when we're extracting the um, assessments and all the campaigns, which would be the abilities wrapped into an adversarial profile here on Caldera. We're going to see that cool stuff when we get there. But let's just go back and show how we can create one from scratch. If I open this up, I can actually create a new one, a color campaign. We'll just give this a name. Okay, that looks fine. We can import an already established template, but I would leave it as none because I just want to use it for. Okay, that should be fine. An organization. Now we can create a new organization. In our case, we'll call it YouTube again for demo. We can just give it any name, YT. We don't have a URL, but now we'll just put something dummy. That should be fine. Do we have anything we're missing? Description. Oh, this is not a valid one, so I'm just going to put okay, that looks good. All right, we'll save that. Now we've got the YouTube. We're going to select the YouTube, deselect this one. We should close this. Okay, now we have our YouTube organization. That's what we're working with. We can pick an icon. Again, any icon should be fine, but usually I'll just pick something at random for now. There are a bunch of them you'd want to look at. For instance, you want to test like firewall. You can just select this firewall SVG. We should be good to go. I'm not going to select any of the test cases here that are pre-built. I'm just going to save this. If I save that, you see I've got YouTube testing here. I can drill into YouTube testing and I can start looking at what I have in YouTube testing. So currently there are no test cases. Let's create a test case just to show what it looks like. On that campaign, we'll create a test case. We can actually import from templates. You can see that if you go like a pre-built templated test cases, you can just fetch that. It's going to be a JSON template, fetch that into here. Or you can even build automation runtime, which we're going to be leveraging as we proceed or as we advance in this. So let's just go from scratch. We want to build a test case. We'll call this, let's pick a known technique, something like T10, maybe T10, 1059 PowerShell. So we'll call this maybe significant execution just for dummy testing. Again, you want to be sure that what you're building here maps to a known adversary or known malware as mapped in MITRE. I would make sense to leverage a try and tell that is valid and also actionable, so you're not just building random stuff. So we're going to call this PowerShell execution. I do not have to give it a description, just some random stuff. Again, I do not have to give this, but if I have like a command, I can do something like maybe PowerShell minus EP bypass, just a dummy test. That looks good to me. I can start this. If I start this, then I can actually set a target. If I have a target that I want to go after, for instance, maybe there's a particular machine that will be the agent hooked up already in Caldera agents, I can just point that here in our next recording, we'll be hooking up an agent and we'll be showing how we can also set that right here. The target name, if it's a Windows, is a platform, we'll give it a platform Windows or cloud, then we give the description, we can save that. So once all that is done, we can then save this. If we save this, you will see we have our first test case. PowerShell status in progress. Now, this is just one test case. Imagine you've got 10 different test cases. You'd want to have all that properly documented because, again, the goal is to be able to measure capabilities for detection. So you want to select test cases that really reflect maybe a threat actor you're trying to measure against or a known malware you're trying to measure against. It could be any of the APTs. Once you have all the test cases documented based on threat intel, then the goal will be to be able to have that executed on the execution framework, which is Caldera. So the next recording, we'll be looking at the automation to fetch our test cases from Vector and actually move them over to Caldera. Then start like an adversary build from scratch in based on the test cases we documented here. Build an adversary profile on Caldera. Then maybe we can hook up an agent. Obviously, then we start like an operation. We've not really leveraged most of the features in Caldera because I want to take this in steps. At this point, I want to stop this recording here because I've been able to deploy Vector, show you how to create a test case, create an assessment and a campaign on Vector. Now, I would recommend you play with this stuff so you get your hands really wet on how this stuff works. Once you're good to go, trust me, there are a whole lot more we can extract from Vector I haven't touched. More like we can see specific test cases. We can even see report dashboards, nice dashboards, which we'll be leveraging once we have the execution done. We also have a bunch of libraries we can leverage here as well for campaigns as well as test cases. Would make sense to play with this thing. It's a good advisory planner. I strongly would recommend you playing with this stuff. Again, you can as well leverage other features like the configuration. Maybe at the point where we want to create an API, we'll see how we can maybe create APIs that we'll be using for our automation. We can also add users if we want to add users. We've got the options to create users, and it's actually fine grained. That's one unique thing I love about it. You can create a user. Let me show you, for instance. I want to create a user, maybe Ben. Let's just give this a password. They will be forced to change that password on the login. You can set permissions. This is why I really love it. I can either add groups or I can attach a policy. In my case, I love to look at what the user role would be, then attach these permissions so the user should be able to carry out the job function. Maybe all they need to do is read only, or maybe they need admin, or maybe they even need specific like target policies, which would be like database management, or even like a GraphQL mutation allow, or even IAM full access. Be sure that you're doing that the right way again on the product environment, so you don't have excessive permissions granted to your user. Okay, I just wanted to showcase that. We've got policies, we've got APIs, we've got identities, we've got settings as well as SSL. In our case, we're not hooking up a certificate, but you can actually do that like I mentioned. You can see that it's pointing to what we have configured in that .env file. So if you want to do that, recommend you change that pointing to your domain, then you have the necessary certificates pasted here and saved that so you can actually use your certificate, valid certificates. Okay, I think we've touched on a whole lot of stuff. Again, I would recommend you play with this. In our next recording, the goal is to be able to start looking at the automation which we have, which is basically a Python script. We would play with it. We would see how we can use it to call maybe assessments on Vector and move that over to an adversary in Caldera. Thank you for your time, and I'll be seeing you in the next recording. Have a good day. Bye.